Hello, everybody. My name is Adeline Monzier, and I'm the US representative of UniFrance, which is the French organization promoting French cinema in the world. I'm very pleased to welcome you to the 26th edition of Rendez-Vous with French Cinema, which is going fully virtual this year. We are halfway through the festival right now, but you can still catch up screenings on the virtual cinema platform of the Film at Lincoln Center till Sunday. And there are 18 inspiring films, both from emerging and established filmmakers. And I encourage you especially to watch the 3 films that are represented today, Summer of '85, Slalom, and Gagarine, which are 3 amazing films. I want to thank our partner in crime for this festival, Film at Lincoln Center, for another great year of collaboration. Today, we're going to have a discussion about music in film with score composers from France and from the US. And this is the 5th year in a row that we're having a more filmmaker industry-oriented talk during Rendezvous. And I want to thank dearly our partners for this talk. So French in Motion with Marine Notte and Esther Bensadon, the Gotham Film and Media Institute, formerly IFP, with Gabriele Capolino, and the SACEM in France with Églantine Langevin. So it is my pleasure to now introduce our moderator for the talk, the composer, producer, conductor, Shruti Kumar. So Shruti, you're on.
Hi, I'm Shruti, everyone. Nice to meet you. I know we're all over the world and I wish we were together. I'm excited to have this talk. I think the majority of our listeners are on the non-musical side of filmmaking. And I think especially in these very isolated times we've had this past year, our thoughts towards nonverbal communication and other languages besides our talking language are very important. And I think music and film really show that marriage of the 2 art forms, how we can use music to make others feel, connect with people across tables we might not have been able to before, etc. So there's a lot of us here. I'm going to try to move quickly. I'm going to start with a question that's kind of a good icebreaker, asking all of you what your first memory of noticing the power of music in film was, and a moment in your life that kind of drove you into this world, as well as giving a brief introduction of how you started in music and where you ended up now. So for instance, for me, I started off very classical. I played classical piano my whole childhood and didn't consider film scoring until I was in graduate school in New York and went to Film Forum actually and saw The Godfather played on a big screen, and hearing Nina Rota's score was like, changed my perception of what I could do with composing music. And to me, making music for film gave me a chance to not corner myself in one genre and kind of keep learning as the process went. So that's kind of my angle for that question. But let's start with Aska, maybe.
Oh. I also grew up playing classical piano my whole life. And I think I grew up watching Hayao Miyazaki films, which were a huge influence for me because it created a whole world that I lived in since I was little. So yeah, I feel like I didn't really mean to become a composer. I somehow fell into this role, but I've always just really loved being in the world of music through cinema.
Nice. How about Emilie?
Another pianist here, and I think I kind of always noticed film score when I was watching films. I remember being very obsessive about The Little Woman, the 1992's film score, which I really love all the thematics and stuff, but it really didn't occur to me that I could become a film composer until I moved to London and went to university. And in my campus, there was also a bunch of film students, and then they did film score for their short films. And that's kind of how I got hooked, because then suddenly I realized that I could be doing this. And yeah, just carried on from there.
Great. JB?
Hello. On me, I'm another pianist again. And as everybody, I started in the conservatory. And I just went to the cinema with friends or with my family. and I've been really interested in science fiction, like movies like Star Wars or this kind of thing. And I was like really impressed by like the big Hollywood sound, you know, like with a lot of orchestras and with horns, and like the power of this kind of you know, like big movies. And but I didn't plan to do any movie soundtracks. I wanted to be a sort of rock star. So I did like a pop band, and the band worked. And then with the band was Air. We, by mistake, we made like we knew Sofia Coppola, and then we started making music for her. And yeah, my plan was not to do soundtracks, but I think that by chance, you know, I started to do that, and I just love it because I think it's like really interesting in terms of art. You know, you have to push yourself much further than in the pop music, I think. So here we go.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting also how songs fit into that equation as well. We can talk about that later. How about Evgueni?
Actually, I would rather speak about the first time I understood what can do the mix between the music and the film, the score. I remember I was studying classical music, as always, everyone today, in Russia, in Moscow. And everybody was speaking about Morricone, and finally I succeeded to listen to some Morricone music, and I was listening to Once Upon a Time in America. And I was very disappointed at first because I was studying classical music, and Morricone music, I thought it was very sweet, too romantic, and I was a little bit disturbed, and I was like, wow, what, Morricone this? And then a few months after, the movie was released in Russia, in Moscow theaters, and I came to watch it. And once I've seen the film, I was absolutely shocked. But it was an amazing, absolutely amazing, unforgettable experience. I remember that I could never take the Morricone's music from my head. I was totally in love with it because the way it was completed by the psychology and the story and the tragedy of the story. So the bitterness of the tragedy of the story was completing the romantic music, and all together it was absolutely so powerful, unbelievable.
Amazing, yeah, Morricone.
Yes,
okay. Amazing. And Nicolas and Sylvain, right? Okay. Pronunciation. How about you guys? What was your moment of? I mean, you both are a duo, so.
We're not a duo, actually, we're a trio, but we have a ghost member who's not there today. And I guess I'm the only one here who did not study classical music. I started playing funk music in the streets with my friends. And then I made a long path that gave me the opportunity to do this incredible job. But the first movie that really changed my perception of music was more than just the music for movies. It was it shown me the music I love the most. It was when I was 11, and it was the Blues Brothers. And I discovered the soul music, and it changed my life. Mm-hmm. So it's not really the orchestral music that you usually hear in a movie, but it's some kind of a musical.
Well, and for me, I must confess, I guess my first memory is not a cinema memory, but a TV memory, and it's also with Morricone as I was a kid, like 10, and I was not struck like you, Evgueni, by the romantic approach of the melody and stuff, because I remember the movie I saw was, I guess, in English title is like The Bad, the Ugly, and the Cruel.
Ah, yes, of course. Yeah.
The good, the bad, and the ugly.
Quite the opposite. I was. I first realized that there was music in movies with this movie.
Yeah, but this one is very different.
For me, it was something I didn't even conscience.
Yeah, I think The Good, Bad, and the Ugly. I mean, my parents are Indian; they're from India, so I grew up in America. But that movie made a big impact. So hearing my father even be able to sing those themes, right? Or Cinema Paradiso or something. I mean, Morricone definitely made an impact everywhere. Okay, so moving on a bit then, I think it's really interesting that some of us come from classical backgrounds, some don't, some come from song background, some come from orchestra background, or both. This is a really important question, I think, for directors to hear our answers to, but when do you prefer to be brought onto a project for a film? I know some of us think our dream scenarios are being brought into the film in script stages so we can write our own themes and have the film tempt with our own music and they'll imagine our music while they're finishing their film, but it's often not the case, right? So we also have relationship with temp music as well, which is a tricky bag, or we have songs that we've produced, records and with vocals, and those are brought into the film in some phase, and then we're brought on as composers. So let's all hear everybody's experiences of that, and it could be anything, right? So Emilie, let's start with you.
Well, the most recent film I did, Censor, was pretty interesting because I had to pitch for this one, but they asked me to pitch only based on the script, even though they already had footage and they probably had a soft locked by then, but they just wanted to kind of get a feel for what I would instinctively do for the film. And that was kind of interesting because yeah, it was almost like a reflex reaction, and it was untinted by the images. And it worked. Like everything I've pitched ended up making it into the score. So I guess my instinct was correct. And then I could kind of really write responding to the images. So I think it really varies, but it's always better to be on board early on than just wait until you have a locked picture and you have 6 weeks until dub and then having to rush.
Or wait until you have a budget.
You should have a budget really early on.
That's true. I want to pair this with another question before we move to the next person. Have you ever been asked to save a scene with music? Has that ever been said to you? And how do you feel about that kind of approach? Being like, we can't fix this edit, we can't figure out this scene. Can you make the music elevate it?
I don't think I've been asked to save. I mean, sometimes you're being asked to kind of shift the perception of a scene rather than save it. So that, again, with Censor, there's like a whole section where we shift perception of reality, or we hint a little bit more heavily into 80s horror films, and then you can kind of work with the music to reinforce that perception. But no, I wouldn't say it was saving. It would have worked. You don't really want as you don't want to.
I know. Okay. Yeah. Aska, what about you? When do you like to be brought onto a project, and have you ever had to play a key role in the end game of a film in terms of evolving a scene, I guess we can say?
For now, lots of the films I worked on, the one I just saw, which is on HBO now, I'm Your Women. I wrote the right when I read the script, and lots of times when I read the script, I feel like the emotions are more, when I write the music to script, it feels more so than relying on footage. I can really express the feelings precisely because I'm not watching, relying on the footage. So I really love doing that first, like just writing to script and kind of going through the emotions of the character in my head. And then normally after that, I kind of start to watch the film and then start to adjust with the film and let it live with the film. But that's I like to work on it pretty closely.
Nice. JB?
I think the question is it's not when, it's in what what is like the story behind the movie, because like of course it's better to be there at the beginning and to have the possibility of composing with the script, because you have the time, you have more time, you can like imagine some themes and let your imagination fly away, because you are dreaming about the movie, and you do your own movies in your head because you're reading the script, so it's better. and you are not prisoner from the pictures, because with the pictures, you know, you have like a timing, and you have like it's a square, and you, in a way, your imagination is like a prisoner. But I think that the question is like how you enter into the movie, because sometimes you are challenged by someone else. For example, like the movie maker is not sure about you. So, you know, if you arrive in the middle of the process or at the end of the process, they are in a panic. And if they are in a panic, they send like signals of stress. And this is when it's like difficult, because you have to go fast. You're not sure. And yeah, it's more difficult. So I think starting at the beginning is a good sign, because it means that they really want you. And it's you have the time to develop your relationship with the director, because I think that also doing a movie soundtrack is also like a psychological work. You know, you have to study the psychology of the director and what he wants to express in his movie. So you have to study his way of thinking, and you know what he wants to bring in terms of emotion. And I think it takes time to understand that. And yeah, but of course, the sooner is the better.
I mean, also, you said you were obviously in a band first. So for that collaboration, did the songs come in first and then you were brought on to do score? Or, I mean, I think about this with Paul Simon and The Graduate all the time, how those songs were temp The Graduate, and then he wrote original songs for the film after the fact. But that's a different kind of entry point, right? Having a director like your songs already, and then put the songs in their brain and then bring you on as a composer. Do you have anything to say about that?
Yeah, I think the best way is like to only do synchronizations. You know, you do your songs, and they take your songs and they put it in the picture. This is the best, because you have no work to do. And I think also the payment is better, I think. So, but yeah, so if you have to really compose the music for the movie, and if you have to do a song, yes, I mean, personally, us with the band Air, we are doing songs, and we would adapt the song to the pictures. We would cut it and change the mood sometimes to make it all right with the pictures. But yeah, but the song is complicated, because you have the voice, and I think that in movie soundtracks sometimes you are required to not disturb the pictures. So if you use a song, you know, you have a voice, you have sometimes some beats and everything, so it takes a lot of room, and it's more difficult, I think.
It's more difficult, but I never mind it, and music is taking more space. Okay, Nicolas and Sylvain, what about you? You guys also come from song background or sort of influence, so.
Actually, we have various experiences from the last week to do the music when they have already a composer and it doesn't work and they are really overstressed. So we experienced this, and it was quite a nice experience. But we also had we've been working with a French director called Thomas Lipti that's been previously shown on Rendez-Vous with French cinema a few years ago with this movie Hippocrate. And with him, we started a collaboration through 3 movies and 2 TV shows. And now we can make music even with the pitch of the script, starting to do some stuff for him and to see the same tunes that were drafted from the first emotion we had just talking with him in the very last, without any edit, in the very last mix of the movie. So it's nice. But I think every movie is a different experience. Even with the same directors and the same team, you won't have the same emotions. You won't be looking for the same things. So it's more about is it easy to find the right emotion with this person, or to find the right distance, the right temperature, rather than how it starts or where it starts, I think, for me.
And as GB said, I think it's important to stay fresh with the project. And I think maybe in the US it goes fast. In France it always goes fast, and it can sometimes be like a long run. So it's important to have a good relationship with your work. If it's too long, sometimes it's changed the work and it's not good for the music.
Amen. You gotta love it every step somehow, right? Even when we're in crunch mode. Evgueni, how about you? In terms of when you like to join a project, or what gets you going there?
Actually, I don't think it's about when I like to join a film. I think that it really depends on the conception and vision of the director. It happened to me to work on a movie without watching it at all. And because the director didn't want the music being in any way illustrative and being just complementary to the story. So it was, for example, for Loveless, a Russian film by the director Andrei Zvyagintsov, who used to work with existent music already. So he was just trying the music as a picture when the film was totally done, and when he had a very precise vision of what the film is. Because sometimes when you start at the very beginning, the vision of the director changes with the editing process, and the music which was perfect in the early stage, done in the early stages, becomes totally wrong in the end, because the vision of the film, of the scenes, of the tension change, and it's okay, it's very comprehensible. So for example, for Loveless, it was just a pitch with few lines of the story, and then I had to work with my music and with my imagination and sending the music without watching the film until the end. In the end, the director called me saying, "Can you please come and see what I done with your music, because I think it's perfect for the film." So it was a kind of miracle. It was the first time working like that. But sometimes, especially with American films or American-like, means industrial, big budget, a lot of people involved, I think that it's very formatted. So you arrive at the end when the edit is almost closed. It's your part which is starting. It's always like very separated. But in art house cinema, I think that most of time it's what the director wants. If he wants to listen, hear something, some color or theme during the script writing, why not? It can be interesting to make it, even if you know that maybe this music will be never in the film in the end, because it will change so many times. Some director wants the music to be here from the very beginning of the edit, because they doesn't want to use temp music. They want start with something closer to the film. And I think that actually mostly of the time, when the vision of the director comes with the idea when to start with the music process.
Absolutely. I think it's everybody's work process. So that's another.
Yes, and I think that mostly of time, young directors start very early, maybe too early, and because they doesn't have yet a vision of what they really want with the film, and it's very difficult to make decision about the editing and also the music. So I think that especially for young directors, it's sometimes better to be sure about the edit first and then start the music, because these elements, the alchemy, can you say alchemy in English?
Sure.
Yeah. Alchemy. Yeah. Alchemy is complicated, so better to be sure about one part.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen the other side too, where younger directors leave music for the very end because they don't realize how much music can change their film. So they'll put the music at the very end, and the score will come, and then all of a sudden the new director, not young necessarily, will say, "Oh my gosh, it's totally different now. Music has changed the whole game for me." So I think it's really important to think about these things, you know, no matter where you are in your career. It could be anything. As you said, it depends on the director for sure. So then let's everyone imagine a dream scenario where some director that you get along with very well approaches you with this gorgeous film, and you get to start at any phase of the project that you want, and you start your film music process? So do you start writing themes like Badalamenti in Twin Peaks? You see him at the roads, like playing some themes too, or do you create a sound set, or just like a palette, or do you get found sounds from your environment? Like I scored a film once where I incorporated subway sounds quite a bit into a New York film. So like there's many ways to start your creative engine, but where would you start? Emilie, why don't you start?
I think it's quite a parallel process for me. I kind of always consider the sound palette and then just move away from them for a little bit and just improvise on the piano for melodies, even if they don't stay on the piano. But yeah, the sound palette is more of the intellectual part, I would say, of the writing process, because as you say, with the example of using found sound and things like that, it's kind of the most I don't know, it's kind of the part of the film score that might have the more meaning. Maybe it's not the right word, but you know what I mean. Sometimes you're going to use instruments that come from a specific place.
Very clever, you know. It can be very clever. You can give a hint, it can become a character.
Yeah. Well, I think that the thematic and the melody should be much more emotional and much more coming from the heart, while the sound palette can be coming from the brain. So I think I try to approach both at the same time, and the sound palette is probably going to be what I'm going to be discussing more with the director, because I'd like them to tell me what they would like the film score to accomplish, and that's going to influence the sound palette.
And this can go into everybody else's answers too, but talking about the language with the director, I think is very important. How specific do you want them to be? Sometimes directors try to use musical language and it doesn't quite match. Sometimes they'll use color, sometimes they'll use feelings, sometimes, you know, what has been your most successful exchange with the director? Or should they just literally hear every stem and be like, I don't like that particular sound at this time code? Or
the time code thing is definitely very useful, but it varies from one person to another. I think the most important is for the director not to worry themselves too much about trying to use musical terms and just express themselves as they feel comfortable, as naturally as possible. And then you as a composer, through time, through the process, you're going to slowly work out what they mean with that word and do a kind of translation for each director of what they're trying to say when they say dark or bassy, or what they call, you know, sometimes they're going to say, I don't like the clarinet, and it's not at all a clarinet. And it's kind of your job to work out what they mean. But yeah, it's from one person to another. And I don't think the director should worry too much about using musical terms.
That's so funny. My most recent film, someone kept being like, we need more cello in this. And I was like, there are 100 cellos playing right now. What are you talking about? I've cut out every instrument. What do you mean more cello? There's only cello in this. Anyway, Aska, if you started on a blank slate, what's your first instinct when you start your creative process?
For me, it's like painting. For me, I think of like the sound palette. I think of like, okay, does this need piano? Should I mix it with synth? Or should I go with strings? Or should I get all the field recordings of the film and process them? It really depends on the film that I'm working on, but the first step for me is always finding the palette, and also kind of working with the director to see which palette they react to well, and which makes the film live the most, bring out the life of the film the most. And one of the films I recently worked on, After Yang, that's coming out this year, that I collaborated with Ryuichi Sakamoto. For this, it takes place in future where humans live with cyborg, and some people are mixed with cyborg and robot, or it's kind of like a Blade Runner but different. It's a drama. And for this one, I actually used AI to create music with me. So I processed lots of like I took Ryuichi Sakamoto's piano scores and some of my stuff, and I did lots of processing with AI and different generations of processing. And sometimes like it's trying to process the sound, so it would make this like sound that we could never
the artifacts, those
produce.
are so cool, yeah.
It was like this kind of like computer trying to process sound, and it ended up being really, for me, it ended up being really beautiful, and this kind of sound that I could never create from using instruments. and it really worked for the film. And I would mix this sound with a piano melody, or so yeah, it's really.
Did you do that separate from the picture? So those were generated to picture, or they were generated first and then the picture was cut to your generated score?
For this film, we had the picture, and I kind of scored to some stuff to picture, some stuff not to picture. But with the AI, you kind of have to feed.
Yeah.
And the more and more you feed, it turns into more like a music, what we think is music.
Sure.
So it takes many different process time in feeding the music to the AI.
Sure.
And it was interesting because some stuff that I fed to AI, it produced more emotional music than what I created or what YouTube created. And we were very, it was like interesting because it's studying our patterns.
Yeah, exactly. What did you use? Can I ask what Google, Magenta, or?
So I actually hired someone to create our own software for this. And
you should release your score for everybody to use as well.
It will when the film hasn't come out yet. But this film is amazing film. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay, JB, how about you? When you start, if you had your dream scenario, how would you start making music for film?
I think it's better when you can compose the music and play the music without the pictures and just think about it and let your imagination go where you want. And suddenly, when you think about the pictures and about the mood, some melodies are coming under your fingers, and then you can exploit or work these melodies and try to make them evaluate in your own way. But actually, each time I try to do that, and I try to have a method. I try to, to be methodist and like to plan and to be like really well organized. And it's always there's always a moment where it doesn't work. When it's a mess and it doesn't work. And I just when I try the music on the pictures, something doesn't work, and the director is not sure, and so there is always this moment when it's like complicated, and I need this moment to reconsider everything and to restart and to forget all my methods because they were wrong, and to start from the beginning, from something, from a mistake or from a bug or from a word that the director said, and I just think about this word and try to really understand what he wanted to say, and to develop like a new instrumentation. Because basically, when you do several soundtracks during a year, you want to have different sound for each movie. You don't want to sound the same for each movie, so it takes time to understand the new soul of the music that you want to put in these new movies. And personally, I need to have time. I need to struggle and to work to make something happen, to make a new thing happen in my heart. And the only way is like to work and try, and it's a mess. And at the end, it works.
Yeah. I think it's very interesting that you say work from a mistake when things are a mess. I mean, sort of like how Aska said, the AI will generate an artifact that suddenly takes you off in a new direction because you hadn't thought about it. Like sometimes in my session, I'll accidentally drag a stem, like as we say, 2 bars to breakfast to the left, and then and all of a sudden it will just change my thinking. Like, oh, the beat is now following on the picture in this new way, and now I've just completely blown my own mind, and now I want to redo my whole score because a mistake has just made something make more sense, right? So I think the beauty with picture and music is these kinds of weird puzzle piecing. Yeah, Aska.
Also, I feel like with emotions, it's interesting because when you write the footage, it's so right on the feeling, and feelings have so many different layers and palettes. When you're sad, there's also many different feelings with sadness. It could be like nostalgia, it could be, and I feel like sometimes your mistake can fit into a scene that's not supposed to be for that scene perfectly, because it actually adds depth and layer to the emotions that more than something you see.
100% timing is everything. And we can talk about this maybe in the next couple of you guys spotting sessions too. It's so important down to like the minutia of every microsecond where we have entrances and fades and like how we create a specific sonic world for a scene, right? So anyway, Nicolas and Sylvain, how would you describe your ideal process and maybe get into some of this other stuff?
It's quite close to Aska with this idea of palette. I mean, I think what's important for us is to reach a universe, a family of instruments that could cope with the universe of the director, trying to understand how it fits. Sometimes it goes with something unusual, which is good for the insight, like a new instrument, like a steel guitar, something bizarre. And
not so bizarre. Steel guitar.
No, not so bizarre. Or new things or something like that. Well, what's important for us is that it's trying to build a landscape first of timber. You say timber? Tambo? Of timber with when we have the landscape, we can travel on it.
Yeah, it could be anything. Do you guys ever make your own instruments?
Yeah,
actually we did.
Yeah, so cool. What was it?
Some kind of steel guitar.
Oh, you made a new steel guitar. Okay, that's a
big one.
Oh,
we also use a programming language called Pure Data.
Cool.
Which is some kind of Max. I don't know if you know these kind of languages. Yeah. That allows us to make some not so as sophisticated as Aska, because it's not an AI, sorry, but works with Markov chain and stuff like this that can produce generative music in a very rough way, but cool. Also make some weird sounds like. It's not like a usual synthesizer. It's more like a virtual modular without limits and also with lots of possibility to create a randomness.
Randomness, great. Yeah.
So it's some kind of instrument. You can also play it with an interface like a video game controller or stuff like that, which allows you to have a new relationship with sounds and your own emotions, rather to play it on a keyboard or on a guitar. It's like when you sing a melody, you have a relationship which is much easier and much more emotional and less intellectual.
Yeah.
When you don't play it, when you just sing it in a microphone, even if you sing it in a weird way with not such a good sound, it will give you something that is really, really connected to yourself.
Yeah.
So
I have similar to what I asked Aska then, if you're using generative software or anything like that, how do you couple that with syncing to picture? Are you creating this music that then you edit to picture, or is it, how do you treat that? Because oftentimes, imagine a composer working to animation and we have to Mickey Mouse things, right, with an orchestra, but seems like the opposite of Mickey Mousing. This is a composer's dream, right? You get to create the emotional needles which the film will have to use to weave their picture together, right? So how do you approach that, working with a film director and introducing randomness into your score?
But we don't show this to the director.
Okay.
It would be crazy. No, we just edit the stuff that we like and pretend that we created it ourselves.
Hear that, directors? We have a lot of secrets. You have no idea what we're doing in our studios. Okay, Evgueni, how about you? What is your favorite way to start a score if you could do it the way you would dream of?
I don't think I have a preferred way to start. I think that you always want to be extremely focused on if you discover the film. So it's very important the first time you read the script or you discover the film to be very focused and try to open emotionally yourself entirely and to enter in the universe of the film. And if you succeed to enter like a music key from a safe, I think if you succeed, you try to keep this emotion, and then, like, for example, Jean-Benoit was saying, forget about the film and just thinking about it, and sometimes sit in front of your piano and starting to play something, and seeing if what you felt while you was reading the script or watching the film is going together, and if it's complete. Because I think that's a very important thing, is to understand the role of the music. Before to understand the panel, colors, instruments, and it's of course to understand the universe of the director, and also what the music can do specifically for this film, how it can help it, how it can complete it, and if it's I think that I don't know, for example, for Wizard of Lies with Levinson film with Robert De Niro, it was about the sick mind of the principal Madoff character. So it was, of course, the music was always showing us that we are in front of us. It's not a man. It's some sick mind, genius sick mind, and the music was using a very strange, unusual sounds and creating always an unsettling atmosphere to make the audience understand that something is wrong, something is not going well with this person. If we come speaking about The Undoing, the show recently released on HBO, it was about to create the feeling that we like everything is unfocused, because we never know the truth, what is happening. The principal character, which is played by Nicole Kidman, never understand all of a sudden that she doesn't know what is her life about, and everything is totally unfocused, and she is trying how you say, as a blind person to go through this darkness and to understand what is happening. And the music is always playing with glissando and some dissonances, so this kind of feeling that you are going through a fog. You don't know what is in front of you. So each time it's interesting to understand psychologically what is the most strong, powerful music can do. Sometimes you understand it with your mind, and sometimes your fingers or the chance just may help you to understand
Right,
it.
there's absolutely no one way.
Yes, it's amazing. Sometimes I really feel that my fingers are much more intelligent than me. It's true.
Muscle memory. Yeah, we all have it.
So you just start. I think that alchemy, again, I come back to alchemy. I think it's a very important part of it, because when you work with the piano and melody, it's okay. You know how the piano sound, and and the melody is very concrete. But when you work with computer, it's thousands or million of sounds, different sounds. So without trying them, without just trying them one after another. Of course, you don't try them all, but you make a kind of preselection. You cannot. So it's alchemy. You're like alchemists trying and trying and trying, and all of a sudden, pop, something come out.
Exactly. And I think we've covered from now, all of you've gotten into the part of what the director wants, and every film has to sort of give you the character you're supposed to play with your music, right? So is the score going to be somebody's brain? Is it going to follow a person's actual?
Yes, but sometimes director cannot think in this way. I think that even most of time, even us composers not really start with psychological analysis of what music should do. I think that just when you try to feel it and as deep as possible, I think that the answer comes from feelings. At least for me, it's like that.
100%. And so this is going to get me into the next phase of this questioning, because we talked about what we do behind the scenes that we don't show directors to get our creative juices flowing, what tools we use, and then also what directors kind of think about before they speak to us, what they feel the role of music should be in their film. So this goes into communicating with directors. I think this is kind of the most important part of this collaboration, how to make that dialogue better, right? How to enrich back and forth between a composer and a director. I'll give this the context of this pandemic. I think the pandemic has really heightened our sensibility when we're remotely collaborating with directors, of what the real nuts and bolts of communication have to be to make this effective and work smoothly and efficient and get a really beautiful artistic result. So for me, for instance, working with directors remotely, I have tried every form of communication, multiple Zoom threads and FaceTime and audio movers and all this stuff to just make sure they're getting the full picture. But it also made me realize how much I took for granted in the nonverbal communication we have in the room together when we're doing our spotting sessions and talking through a film, et cetera. So I'll start with you, Emilie. What do you feel is the thing you value the most, be it organizational or emotional, about your dialogues with directors?
Well, I think you're right in the sense that the pandemic has kind of taken away one of the most important thing, which is I do like being in the same room just to be able to get the body language and a feel for how they react to the music. And also it's just a lot easier in terms of muting tracks and kind of isolating specific moments. But yeah, in a sense, all you're trying to do is to replicate this with Zoom, with audio movers, and with trying to share screens and things like that. But I think it's spending time together and just getting to know each other and getting to know how people communicate and how they feel. Just feeling comfortable with the director is a really important step, I think, and learning to trust each other. And the trust is in both ways. It's you showing what you've created, but I think especially because I've worked mainly with first-time director, I think a lot of the time they also feel a little bit intimidated working with a composer, and it's really useful once you get to that stage of trust, that they feel like they can give their notes or they feel like they can say the wrong word. And yeah, I think trust is the most important thing.
I kind of love that, because so many other industries get to say, keep your work and personal separate, but I think it's impossible. You have to build this kind of human connection with your collaborators in film and in music in order to really get the best product. So it is very much a human effort. Aska, how about you? What is your big note for dialogue with the director?
Until now, I mean, one of the projects I've worked on, like the Wolfpack Skate Kitchen Betty, Crystal Modo is the director, and she's also one of my best friends. And we actually started making, me putting sound to music very early on, before I even knew what composing was. Like I was making some of the sound with like a spoon, putting like spoon with a glass and creating different sounds because I didn't have any way to make beats. With her, it's like she's also my best friend, so we already have this established relationship. But with other directors, normally I haven't met anybody during the pandemic and started on the project. Fortunately, all my projects I already was starting before the pandemic, so I'm not sure what that would be like. But it does really take for me to be in the same room, because then I feel they're energetical. There's much more like unspoken, wave that you're sharing, and I feel like I'm super sensitive to people's energy. So normally, with every project, I've been able to kind of match and kind of enter that world with every project I've worked on. I've really been able to tap onto what they're feeling.
I mean, I think music is a nonverbal language. I mean, not nonverbal in that sense, the word verbal. Like,
but even
I
with
think
people,
it's what our role is, right?
Yeah, and like so much of what you feel with someone is more than you can, word is just limiting.
100%. And I think that's
the
the big
feeling anyway. So yeah, I think that it's really important to be close to each other to feel that.
And I do notice in the pandemic too, though, sending music, I mean, maybe it's more versions and more revisions, but it does get the message across more than emails and typing and WhatsApp and all this stuff. JB, how about you? In communicating with the director, what is your big takeaway there?
I think the best is to have the director next to you and in the studio and just speak about the movie and see and watch scene by scene, the one after the other. But if it's not possible, I mean, just like Skype is okay, or at least what is the most important is that the director really clearly say what the problem is, or if there is no problem, why he loves the music. But of course, the best is when the director is a friend, because you know his reactions. Or yeah, also like it's important, I think, that also to hang around, or to be in a bar, or but it's impossible now, but like to have a drink and to
I miss it.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. How about you, Nicolas and Sylvain? What about, how are you, I mean, as a trio, how are you managing that 4-part dialogue?
We live in communication for true. And we suffer, of course, of this pandemic situation. For instance, because we talked, Aska and GB talked about the relation with the director, but there is also the relation with the editing room. And it became like independent cells.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's not always easy.
Yeah.
It's part of the complexity of the situation.
Uh-huh.
And
yeah,
also
the stage.
there is a big help in technology.
Mm-hmm.
The possibility of sending stuff through the internet and
yes.
having possibility of very fast feedback from the composer to the editing room, and from the editing room back to the composer. It's at the same time, it's very nice because it allows us to be more precise, to tune stuff in a more precise way. But since what we're all of us looking for is to find the right emotion, to find the right way to be in the movie without being too much or without being too far away, it's difficult to not to lose the right emotion that you feel when you have too much feedbacks. And then you start to be too much on details and forgetting what is the most important thing, which is the stuff. And this comes with the discussions. If you are in the same room with the director, you don't go so much into details. That's the main difference for us, for me, is that when you have the ability to fix things together, you go to a rawer level, which is more efficient to me, rather than being very verbal, writing mails and say, I like this in this cue at 31 seconds, I like these notes and all this. If you get too much into this kind of relationship, you lose what's the most important thing, which is the basic emotions.
That is a very astute observation, actually. I hadn't thought about it that way, but you're so right. If you're not together, you do lose the forest for the trees. You're just fixing every second of music, and then finally you're like, what is this music? I didn't write it anymore.
Yeah, it's like Evgueni said just before, sometimes you have a music that fits the movie very well at the beginning, and if you go too much into details at the early stage, you will have a disappointment at the end, because the emotions won't be the same, and you have to throw away all this stuff that you've been tuning like crazy. So it's much more easier when you have a straight communication.
Yeah.
Now it's not possible, so let's hope it's going to change soon.
Or we'll find some new technology, right? Evgueni, how about you?
I'm sorry, my cat just...
I know, your cat seems very entertaining to me.
Very entertaining. It's too much, a little bit too much entertaining, I would say.
Okay, we have 3 minutes left. I don't know. Yeah, but say what we're going to end with you, and then maybe take some questions. But what's your big...
Oh, no, actually, no, I don't think I will take more time, because I don't have anything to add to what already was said. Okay. I agree with all this. And my category also is...
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Well, we have very little time. Maureen, if you're here, or somebody at Lincoln Center, if we do have time to take some of these questions, we can do that. Or
questions will be great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm seeing some questions here, but I guess I'll just go for it and see when this ends. Okay.
Please only ask questions with a very specific music terms.
Okay, so we have a question here that's interesting. Aside from your relationship with the director, could you tell us more about your relationship with the sound designer on films, please? And do you like to work with them in tandem with the director? So I guess this would also include your music editor and your mixer and all these people, our teams. So it's very much a collaborative process, unless you're working on an indie film and doing it all yourself, which is also a thing that we've all probably done. Who wants to answer that? Working with a musical team on a film. Anybody? Are we all solo birds? Okay.
I think that actually, unfortunately, sometimes it's very difficult because music team and sound team works in same time and goes on the trying to make something as soon as possible, because it's a problem of schedule, of very short schedule, and the director didn't already approved the work of the sound team, so we cannot really exchange before he approved. But when in the perfect world, when everybody has the time to exchange, it's great, because sometimes music can play the role of sound design and as the opposite. And when you speak with sound team and the director and trying to understand about each scene, what will be the best, the more subtle, the more appropriate, if it's music or sound, it's amazing. But it really needs a lot of time, because sometimes the director doesn't know and wants to have both proposal from both teams, and then you continue the exchange. So the time, of course, is of an essence, and it's a real luxury.
It is a luxury because you also have to have the budget to have the team. Oftentimes we have to hire the editor, and the sound design, I'll always ask for that stem separately, and then sometimes I'll use that in my score if I'm the one ending up conforming the picture.
It's true. So but I think that in Europe, sometimes on the art house project, sometimes it's small budget, but people are so motivated to do it, to be so excited to be part of it, so they are willing to give more of time, and actually things are possible with motivation, I think, and also how much you want to do it. Sometimes, for example, now I'm working for a very small budget film, but it's very exciting. It's an interesting, powerful film, and so we try to go to see the music team to have time to sometimes to change the music, to look for different approaches, because I know that this work will be something I will be proud of. So
okay,
I hope so.
We have one other sort of longer question, and then two very easy questions, but actually they may all be easy questions. But how important is the DAW that you work in to you? I definitely have a default DAW that I use. I work in Logic actually, but I also have to use Cubase on some projects, and Pro Tools when I'm working with engineers, and Ableton when I'm working with other producers. So I've sort of had to just learn them all, but I do have a favorite. Are you guys married to your DAWs? I think with film, it does make a bit of a difference, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this myself. Emilie? I'm gonna go in order because I want to hear everybody.
I'm on Logic as well, but I'm aware I'm gonna have to learn a bit of Pro Tool, just because of recording sessions and stuff like that. It's easier to be familiar with Pro Tool.
That's true. Aska?
I use Logic, but for some stuff I use Ableton, so I can really do like really fucked up stuff and filter. So,
which now you can do in Logic, by the way, in a way that I think is a little better than Ableton. But all right, and JB.
I have Pro Tools, and I only know really well Pro Tools, but you know, I try to learn Ableton and also Logic, but I think that Pro Tools is working pretty well with you know, acoustic things, but very well with MIDI. And so when I want to use MIDI, I use Ableton, and I have both, so it's great. But I think that, nowadays you have to be like a maestro. You have to know every program, you have to know everything. And the better you know, the better you go fast.
Yeah.
And I need to work that a little bit more.
It takes a minute, but now's a good time, honestly, to just learn all the jazz. Nicolas and Sylvain, you guys use Max? No, something like that. What are you using?
Logic and both.
Amazing.
But mostly Logic.
I love this. In America, I'm very shamed for using Logic. So maybe I have to move to France and London too.
Sure.
Evgueni, what about you? What DAW do you use?
No, I was happy to hear Max. You know about Max software?
We all know about Max. I think
wow.
People have mentioned Max in this room.
Okay, no, because I remember I studied with Earcam. It was such a sophisticated thing. I never understood anything of that.
Well, Ableton bought Max, by the way, or Ableton has Max in it now, so it's very accessible to people.
Yeah. I'm not intelligent enough. No, Pro Tools and Logic are fine. Yeah, exactly. I think it's a perfectly combined together for different kind of work. Audio more on Pro Tools and MIDI on Logic.
Editing. Okay, these are very direct, quick questions.
Direct.
Aska, can you say the name of the film again you composed for with AI? And this is not possible, but everybody's curious about how you show a sample of AI music or processing, which we can have another whole panel about that later. But what's the film called?
It's called After Yang.
Okay. All right. Maybe
it'll come out this year. And also I made a big mistake that I don't want to get in trouble for. The other film that I scored, I'm Your Women, is not on HBO. It's on Amazon. I was like, oh no.
It's like communication between the production team and composers. And then Nicolas and Sylvain, they want to know what the name of the program you used was to create your virtual instrument. Your big steel guitar.
It's a license-free program that was developed by a saint man called Miller Phuket from, I guess, University of California.
Okay.
And the name of the program is Pure Data.
Pure Data.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah. And it's free. You can download it and become a Earcam compatible composer.
Yes, there's some amazing free software coming out. There's a new one that does multiple tunings from around the world too. It's kind of cool what's happening.
I mean, Pure Data is basically the free version of Max.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
There's a very long question for JB, I think. Did Francois, your director friend, already have the cures in between days for the opening and end credits and Rod Stewart sailing in 2 scenes when you started out on your score for summer of '85? The notes during David's capsizing of the sailboat with the storm approaching are great. So this is a very detailed score question. I don't really understand the question either, but I don't think the person.
I think it reflects in the.
I guess they're asking about the relationship between your score and the songs in the film that you just scored.
Oh, okay.
So how did you have to work around the soundtrack, or?
I don't know. Maybe this was done before. I don't know. Yeah. But as I said before, I think it's great when you do some music for an album or for a song or for someone else, and then the song is taken, and you don't know it's a synchronization on the. And that's great because, usually synchronizations are put louder in the movie. I mean.
That's true.
Yeah, if they put like the sync loud, and sometimes your music is like really small, you can't hear.
Yes, so
the
true.
dub stage, the tragedy of the dub stage, where all of a sudden my bass just leaves the room. Like, what happened to the bass?
It's about the price they pay for it. They pay much more money for synchro, so they put it louder.
I mean, that's another whole panel about budgeting for music and film. But guys, we are actually out of time. I'm not sure if anybody. But thank you for joining us. I'm so glad to meet you all, and I hope we can all hang out in person someday at a bar, like JP was saying, and talk about this in person. And thank you everybody else for attending. We got a good crew here of attendees, and good luck with everything. Stay safe, and I'll see you soon. Okay, bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.